Good morning. I see mostly familiar faces. I see maybe one or two not as familiar faces, but I am Trish, and I am the worship lead here and the children's ministry director. And on occasion, I have the privilege of speaking on Bruce's behalf. And so today I get to do that. And I'm pretty excited about this whole tweet thing. This whole tweets from the OT, from the Old Testament. I thought it was a pretty clever name. Bruce came up with it. It's pretty clever. Connie started us off. She did a great job. So since July 3rd, when we introduced the current sermon series, Tweets from the OT, our plan was to visit many of the characters, is our plan, not was, characters from the Old Testament and share what we feel they continue to have influence over us and in our daily lives today. Not just in Old Testament times, as Tom said, but also New Testament and current relevance. Twitter and other social media sites are a place to research and to share, to complain for some people, to exclaim. But the primary purpose of Twitter in particular is to influence and do it with what are known as tweets, for those that are not real familiar. 140 characters or less. I think Bruce admitted this, and I would fall into this same category. 140 characters is very, very hard for me. It's just way too short a space to get what I want to say across. Today, I am going to tweet, if you will, or speak about Esther. Esther is a very unlikely hero in her time. She was a young woman raised by her cousin Mordecai as a Jew in Persia. We can relate, or at least I can, to this story pretty easily. It's a rags to riches sort of tale, if you will. Through a series of events, she wins favor with King Xerxes and becomes the queen. While the king finds great favor with Esther, it still could maybe be a little problematic and difficult to understand how romantic their relationship could have been when at any given time he could chop her head off if she was to enter into his presence in his court. This was the case with everyone, anybody that came unannounced, including the queen, could not come in unannounced or risk losing their head. Esther was naturally beautiful, and she certainly had guts also. She did take that chance, and it was an act that would save her people, her uncle Mordecai, and her entire nation, actually. The book of Esther is filled with villains, plots to kill the king, mischief, love, family, courage, bravery, beauty, and betrayal. And some particular words to live by that Mordecai has always shared with Esther after he adopted her as his daughter were, "You never have to be afraid to do the right thing." And I show you this because I'm going to refer to VeggieTales in a little bit. I don't know how many of you are familiar with VeggieTales, but a lot of kids are. But I'll tell you, it's not just for kids. It really isn't. It's one of those things that the humor and the stories are absolutely not lost on adults whatsoever. So here is Esther in all of her, I think she's an onion. I think she's a green onion. I don't know. I know Mordecai's a grape, of that I'm sure. But anyway, you never have to be afraid to do what's right. And so there's just kind of a visual of Esther. What the book is not filled with is God, at least, sorry, I gave my thing away. At least not directly. I thought this is really, really curious. It is the one book in the Bible that doesn't ever directly relate to God. But it's pretty plain to see his actions, his thoughts, and his plans. Now, here's my little fun tweet for Queen Esther. I don't know. I'm not very good at tweets, as you can tell. Where did he go? I don't know. Hashtag, where did he go? As Max Lucado says about this phenomenon, his fingerprints are on every page, but his name never appears. Could it be that God is more concerned with getting the job done than getting the credit? It's kind of an interesting thought. So back to the book. It opens up with Queen Vashti acting insubordinate to King Xerxes, to which his most trusted advisors strongly suggest that he takes a stand against. So we'll read together in Esther 1:16 through 18. Memucan spoke up in the council of the king and princess. It's not only the king Queen Vashti has insulted, it's all of us, leaders and people alike, in every last one of King Xerxes' provinces. The word's going to get out. Did you hear the latest about Queen Vashti? King Xerxes ordered her to be brought before him, and she wouldn't do it. When the women hear it, they'll start treating their husbands with contempt. The day the wives of the Persian and Mede officials get wind of the queen's insolence, they'll be out of control. Is that what we want? A country of angry women who don't know their place? In the VeggieTales version of this story, this is why I think you should look it up, because I'm not going to do it justice, but Haman, who works kind of the right-hand man guy for King Xerxes, sends Haman to the queen in the middle of the night, and he knocks on the door, and he is requesting that the king wants a sandwich. The king wants you to make him a sandwich. And she says, well, the king can make his own sandwich, and slams the door with her curlers in her hair. And anyway, it's pretty cute. And I think she's an asparagus. And it's just really well done. Anyway, so that was her insubordination in VeggieTales. Anyway, you get the idea. I wish I could have shown some clips, but we could have got really caught up in that and then never really got to the real deal here. So Vashti was permanently banned from his presence, and the discussion about how to find a new queen for King Xerxes came about. The king's young attendant suggested that the king appointed officials in every province of his kingdom to go and collect every beautiful young virgin to the palace complex of Susa and to the harem run by Haggai, the king's eunuch who oversees the women. He will put them through their beauty treatments. Then let the girl who best pleases the king be made queen in place of Vashti. What it doesn't say in that particular verse is that it's 12 months of beauty treatments. So as I read through this, I thought about beauty treatments and what that might mean in Old Testament times. So I did a little research because I'm thinking in my head, like what I would expect to see on a spa menu if I went, to the nail place, or I went up to the Chrysalis in Bellingham, or, some fancy spot. And I thought, So in the Expositor's Bible commentary, the words that form the basis of beauty treatments in the Old Testament times are translated to scour and polish. So it goes on to say that in a dry climate, subject to drought and water shortage, people did not bathe frequently. The 12-month process of beauty treatments might be thought of as a cleansing, hygienic exfoliation, followed by refinements by fragrances. Haggai's plan placed skincare first that dealt with cracking and wind damage, healing of sores and skin diseases. Many of the oils and natural cures of that time were natural anti-disinfectants and had antifungal properties. This was to protect the king from picking up any skin diseases or ailments that might be brought into his harem. So here was my best attempt at what Esther's tweet might have been. I'd be very afraid of the Brillo pad, I think. And then this is what my tweet would be about 12 months of spa treatments. Nice, feels so good to be pampered. Oh, spa. Yeah, so very different times, obviously. Two very, very different looking things. Esther spent a lot of time with Haggai during her 12 months of treatments. And he liked her so well that he assigned her 7 of her own personal maids. During all of this time, she never made any mention about her history or racial background because Mordecai, her uncle, and adoptive father, had told her not to. During this 12 months, Mordecai would walk every day by the palace gates and inquire as to what Esther was doing, how she was doing. And after her treatments had ended, Esther, along with many of the other women, were taken before the king, but he found favor in Esther and chose her to be his queen. So think back, this is a young woman who's just walking down the street, talking to Uncle Mordecai. Things are good. She's doing her chores. I don't think it does mention specifically, she's young. 12, 13, 14, maybe in that department. And she gets told to hop into this, I don't know, what is it, a wagon? To this thing. And she is taken. And she is taken from everything she knows. And she goes through the Brillo pad and the whole, 12 months of things. And then she's all of a sudden in like a talent show of sorts. And then she gets chosen to be the queen of Persia. So he found favor in Esther and again chose her to be his queen in place of Queen Vashti. Story goes on to talk about how Mordecai overheard a plot to kill the king by two of the guards at the palace gate. Because remember, Mordecai used to walk back and forth, checking on Esther and kind of keeping track of the palace gates. He told Esther about the plot, which she shared with the king. And she gave Mordecai the credit, because that's the way she is. All of the dealings with the king, everything he did, were recorded in a logbook. This is important. Including this turn of events, this plot to kill him was also written down in this logbook. And I'm going to refer back to that in a little bit, as the book does, of Esther. The king then gave Haman, his right-hand man, an elevated position in his courts, higher than all the other nobles, with the command that everyone bow to Haman. Haman was a power-hungry individual, so it did not go over so well when Mordecai refused to bow to Haman. He told him that he bows only to his king and his God. Haman grew so angry that he launched a plan to have not just Mordecai killed for his refusal to bow, but in fact all the Jews, along with Mordecai, should be put to death. And Haman was able to sell this idea pretty easily to the king because he promised practically a small fortune to be donated to the king's court. And so an edict was proposed and given the seal of the king's royal signet ring, stamp of approval. Then we read in Esther 4, when Mordecai learned what had been done, he ripped his clothes to shreds and put on sackcloth and ashes. Then he went out into the streets of the city, crying out in loud and bitter cries. He came only as far as the king's gate, for no one dressed in sackcloth was allowed to enter the king's gate. As the king's order was posted in every province, there was a loud lament among the Jews, and fasting and weeping and wailing, and most of them stretched out on sackcloth and ashes. Esther's maids and the eunuchs came and told her. The queen was stunned. She sent fresh clothes to her uncle Mordecai so he could take off his sackcloth, but he wouldn't accept them. Esther called for Heath, one of the royal eunuchs whom the king had assigned to wait on her, and told him to go to Mordecai and get the full story of what was happening. So Heath went to Mordecai in the town square in front of the king's gate. Mordecai told him everything that had happened. He also told him the exact amount of money that Haman had promised to deposit in the royal bank to finance the massacre of all the Jews. Mordecai also gave him a copy of the bulletin that had been posted in Susa ordering the massacre so he could show it to Esther when he reported back with instructions to go to the king and intercede and plead with him for her people. Heath came back and told Esther everything Mordecai had said. Esther talked it over with him and sent him back to Mordecai with this message. Everyone who works for the king here and even the people out in the provinces know that there is a single fate for every man or woman who approaches the king without being invited: death. The one exception is if the king extends his gold scepter, then he or she may live. And it's been 30 days now since I've been invited to come to the king. When Heath told Mordecai what Esther had said, Mordecai sent her this message. Don't think that just because you live in the king's house, you're the one Jew who will get out of this alive. If you persist in staying silent at a time like this, help and deliverance will arrive for the Jews from someplace else, but you and your family will be wiped out. Who knows? Maybe you were made queen for just such a time as this. Esther sent back her answer to Mordecai. Go and get all the Jews living in Susa together. Fast for me. Don't eat or drink for 3 days, either day or night. And I, my maids, will fast with you. If you will do this, I'll go to the king, even though it's forbidden. If I die, I die. Mordecai left, and carried out Esther's instructions. If I die, I die. These feel like very strong and convicting words from our young Queen Esther and speak to her loyalty, humility, and courage. Who among us in this room would do this? Who would have the faith in God and overwhelming sense of desire to free her people from the ultimate persecution? The book doesn't mention Esther praying or crying out to God for strength, but I would guess that that was the case. So Esther dresses in her royal robes and dares to enter the outer area of the king's royal throne, all the while knowing he might very well take her life for simply showing up unannounced. He sees her and holds out his gold scepter to her. She touches the sharp end and he drops it. Then the king asks her what she wants. What is it, Queen Esther? What is your request? Even up to half my kingdom, it will be given to you. Esther is nervous and doesn't know exactly what to expect, but she doesn't come fully unprepared. She invites King Xerxes and Haman to her quarters for a feast that she has prepared for them. The king and Haman accept the invitation, and when there, ask again, "What is it you wish for, Esther? Just say it and it will be so." She is unable to make her request the first night they come for a feast. I'm guessing it's because she's so nervous. She invites them again, so the following evening for another banquet she will prepare for both the king and Haman. The evening after the first feast with Esther, but before the second feast the following day, King Xerxes was having a difficult time sleeping and so asked that someone read the king's log books to him to help him fall asleep. This is Esther 6, 1 through 14. That night the king couldn't sleep. He ordered the record book, the day-by-day journal of events, to be brought and read to him. They came across the story there about the time that Mordecai had exposed the plot of Bigthana and Teresh, the two royal eunuchs who guarded the entrance and who had conspired to assassinate King Xerxes. The king asked, "What great honor was given to Mordecai for this?" "Nothing," replied the king's servants who were in attendance. "Nothing has been done for him." The king said, "Is there anybody out there in the court?" Now Haman had just come into the outer court of the king's palace to talk to the king about hanging Mordecai on the gallows he had built for him. Remember, Haman was really not very happy because he wouldn't bow to him. So that's what was going to happen. The king's servant said, "Haman is out there waiting in the court." "Bring him in," said the king. When Haman entered, the king said, "What would be appropriate for the man the king especially wants to honor?" Haman thought to himself, he must be talking about honoring me, because who else would it be? So he answered the king, "For the man the king delights to honor, do this. Bring a royal robe that the king has worn and a horse the king has ridden, one with a royal crown on its head. Then give the robe and the horse to one of the king's most noble princes. Have him robe the man whom the king especially wants to honor. Have the prince lead him on horseback through the city square, proclaiming before him, 'This is what is done for the man whom the king especially wants to honor.'" "Go and do it," the king said to Haman. "Don't waste another minute. Take the robe and horse and do what you have proposed to Mordecai, the Jew who sits at the king's gate. Don't leave out a single detail of your plan." That backfired. Whoops. So Haman took the robe and horse. He robed Mordecai and led him through the city square, proclaiming before him, "This is what is done for the man whom the king especially wants to honor." Moving on to chapter 7 in the book, Esther now has the strength and she is prepared to tell the king what she wishes for. And verse 3 says, "If I have found favor with you, O king, and if it pleases your majesty, grant me my life. This is my petition. And spare my people. This is my request." King Xerxes asked Queen Esther, "Who is he? Where is the man who has dared to do such a thing? The adversary and enemy is this," I'm assuming points to him, "the vile Haman." At least she does in VeggieTales, so it must be true. Haman was terrified before the king and knew that he would succumb to an unfortunate fate. King Xerxes gave all of Haman's estate to Esther. She begged the king to rewrite the edict and to send the fastest horses to deliver the new plans surrounding provinces in all 127 states in the area so that her people would be spared. They didn't have Twitter and Facebook and social media and cell phones to call everyone and say, whoa, 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 we made a mistake. Call off the first edict. In Esther 8:14 and 15, so the couriers, fired up by the king's order, raced off on their royal horses. At the same time, the order was posted to the palace complex of Susa. Mordecai walked out of the king's presence wearing a royal robe of violet and white, and a huge gold crown, and a purple cape of fine linen. The city of Susa exploded with joy. For the Jews, it was all sunshine and laughter. They celebrated, they were honored. It was that way all over the country, in every province, in every city where the king's bulletin was posted. The Jews took to the streets in celebration, cheering and feasting. And not only that, but many non-Jews became Jews that day. Because now it was almost dangerous not to be a Jew. Maybe Esther, I don't know. Never have to be afraid to do the right thing. Never doubt Mordecai, that's for sure. God may never have been mentioned directly in the book of Esther, but he certainly shows up all throughout the book. Here's the ways in which I found him. When a young, beautiful Jewish girl was chosen to be the new queen, when she found such favor with the king that she was able to enter his court unannounced and live to tell about it, I suppose. Esther was raised with strong values and continued to live them out through her adversity. Courage, bravery, kindness, and humility. I saw him when the king couldn't sleep and asked for his logbooks to be read, when he discovered Mordecai's allegiance to him and was properly recognized and a bond of trust was formed with the king. I saw him when Mordecai was able to keep tabs on Esther while inside the palace gates. He cared so much for his niece, fellow Jew. I found it in the willingness of all the Jews in Susa to fast and pray for 3 days and nights in support of Esther. I found it in Esther's sense of integrity and courage to face great danger. I found it in the favor the king showed Esther, as evidenced by him sending his best, fastest horses to retract the original edict and spread the word to all the states so the Jews would be spared. Quite honestly, God might not be directly referred to in many situations, not just the book of Esther, even in our daily lives. So your school or your work day or your time at home with your family, in the car on this summer's road trip, his name might not be readily spoken or read directly, but if you take time to reflect just a bit, really look for him, I'm pretty sure you'll find him in every circumstance, every celebration, every argument, every challenge, injury, victory, relationship, every win, every loss, every surprise, everywhere. I want to leave you with a few words from A.W. Tozer from the book of The Root of Righteousness. In preparation for this sermon, I went through a Bible study on the book of Esther by Max Lucado. This was in there, and I just felt so appropriate way to wrap this up. So again, from A.W. Tozer, The Root of Righteousness. We should never take any blessing for granted, but accept everything as a gift from the Father of lights. Whole days may be spent occasionally in the holy practice of being thankful. We should write on a tablet, one by one, the things for which we are grateful to God for and to our fellow man. And a constant return to this thought during the day as our minds get free will serve to fix the habit in our hearts. In trying to count our many blessings, the difficulty is not to find things to count, but to find the time to enumerate them all. He says, personally, I have gotten great help from the practice of talking over with God the many kindnesses I have received from my fellow men. To my parents, I owe my life and my upbringing. To my teachers, I owe that patient line upon line instruction that took me when I was young, ignorant pagan, and enables me to read and write to this day. I am grateful to the patriots and the statesmen of the past. I owe the liberties I now enjoy. The numerous and unknown soldiers who shed their blood to keep our country free, I owe a debt I can never pay. And I please God to enlarge my heart when I remind the Lord that I am grateful for them, for every man and every woman of every race and nationality who may have contributed anything to my peace and welfare. I am eternally grateful and shall not let God forget that I am. Holy Father, you are so good to us, and often you work through others to show us that goodness, but we don't always recognize it. Open our hearts, Lord, and our eyes to see the kindness of others so that we can thank them and praise you. We give you all the glory this day and every day. Amen.